Okay, hi. This is take two of my project overview. So this project I have titled Censor This, and you're looking at a template right now that I found on a website. I'm going to show you a couple of websites. I found on this project-based learning website, bie.org. I found a lot of templates to use to help me organize my project. And this site is really great. I've registered. All you have to do is give them your email. It has videos, tools, research behind everything. I haven't delved into the services. There's a whole community of educators to talk to. There's a blog, there's a store, of course. You can also search by projects and see what other people are doing. But the part that I'm using right now came from this tab, the PBL Do It Yourself. There's a whole toolbox filled with checklists and templates and all sorts of different ways to organize your project and to make sure that you have all of the right parts of a project for true project-based learning. So that's where this template came from. So the name of the project, like I said, is Censor This, and I'm using it in my 11th grade American Literature course, which is a college prep class. And to give a little context here, I didn't really go into it, but too much in writing here, but after reading Fahrenheit 451, where we'll talk a little bit about banning and challenging books, students will then select a book from a list of American literature that has been banned or challenged in schools and libraries across the United States in order to read that book in a small book group. It'll be the last novel that we do together as a class, so they will be very familiar with discussion protocols and ways of discussing books in small groups, and also familiar with the idea of banned and challenged books. So it's kind of two projects going on at once because they're reading that novel, and at the completion of the novel, they're going to be writing a persuasive essay as to whether or not that book should be banned and challenged in schools, or if that's a book that we should just leave alone. And that task is a thesis paper, and the thesis paper is a graduation portfolio requirement. So students have to show that they can meet standard on a literary-based thesis paper. So that's one project, but that's not my project. That's one that the thesis paper is something they have to do anyway. My project, the Censor This aspect, is working on a group project that will require the group to generate questions about censorship and then to research one of their questions. And the protocol that I use for that is from a book called Make Just One Change, Teach Students to Ask Their Own Questions. And it's by Dan Rothstein and Luz Santana, and you can find it on Amazon. It's incredible, and it's a whole book about just one protocol for getting students to write questions. And I've done it so far. We've been in school 4 weeks. I've done it once with my students so far. We're about to do it again tomorrow. And it's amazing, and the students really like it. I asked them for some reflective feedback, and they were like, this is like, groundbreaking. They were like, no one's asked us to write our own questions before. And it seems like it's such a little tiny thing, but the kids really enjoyed it. So what I'm going to do is give them the topic of censorship and help them generate questions around that. And then there's this whole way of prioritizing them, and then they will choose one that as a group they will research further, trying to search for an answer or answers. So while they're doing this, they'll gather resources that will help them answer their question. They will analyze those resources, and then they will present their findings to the class in a format of their choosing. And I just jotted down some of the ones that I'm really familiar with, but of course when I start talking with the students about this, they're probably going to know more than I am, and have lots of different options. So this is a really nice place for creativity from the students. But I know of Prezi, VoiceThread, MentorMob, iMovie, and Glogster of different ways of doing presentations that aren't Keynote, just trying to get them to do something a little bit different. This project, like I said, stands on its own as a project, but it's also scaffolding for two major assignments that are still to come in the year. One will be the research paper, which they'll pretty much, they will have kind of started by the time they start this project. But students will have been taught the research project, specifically how to gather materials and take notes during the censorship project. So it will scaffold up for that. And also the transition speech, which is a graduation portfolio task where students must give a formal presentation. So this presentation and working on the formal presentation skills will scaffold up to that graduation portfolio assignment. The driving question is going to be generated by the students in small groups. Every small group will have its own driving question, and I have no way to anticipate that at all. Some of this is just going to be a surprise to me as we kind of work through it with the students, and that's one of those pieces. I don't know what they'll be researching yet. It will be on the topic of censorship. These are the content standards, W7, which is conduct short as well as more sustained research projects. W8, which is gathering information and using advanced searches, and then also assessing the strengths and limitations of each of those sources that they gather. And SL4, which is presenting information. It also has to do with the organization of the presentation. The next box that they have here is to check off 21st century skills, which I thought was really interesting, and it also helped me organize myself. And you check off what's going to be taught and assessed, or work that's just going to be encouraged. And I really like that part, because there are certain things I'm teaching and assessing, and then there are certain things I'm really just encouraging. That it's just the way we do things. You know, for example, the use of technology and advanced searches. I'm going to do a mini lesson on advanced searches. I expect that they use it, but I'm not assessing it, so it went into my encouraged. But you'll see, and under here, I just made notes for myself. They gave me the word collaboration, but I wrote down different ways that I will be seeing collaboration. And some of it's going to be taught and assessed, and some of it's just going to be encouraged. And so you'll see teacher observation, the mentor mob playlist that I'm going to have them do, a reflection, a discussion of the research that they found and how they'll use it and if they'll use it. And using teacher-selected protocols, for example, a critical friends protocol to do a final review of the presentation. So all of these are ways that they will be collaborating. Mentor Mob is a website that I found that allows students, well, anybody, to create what they call a playlist. And what a playlist is just a collection of sources. You can find them on all sorts of topics. They even have playlists that are just for teachers. And so, for example, this flipped classroom concept playlist is out there, and it's collaborative. It's kind of like Wikipedia. I could add to this playlist if it's open for me to add to. And each site that you add is called a step. And so there are 19 steps or 19 different sites in this collection. So here's one, it's a video, and then you can click next and it will take you to the next, whatever someone found about flipping, or whatever the topic is. And so Mentor Mob also has Mentor University, which is just for education and using Mentor Mob and creating playlists in the classroom. There is a fee for it. It's incredibly minimal. I know my department's going to pay for it. That might be something you want to look into if that seems like it's something that your students might use. But it's really neat, and it's visual, and it's, using the internet and talking about finding good sources to add to playlists. So good learning there. There will be a presentation, and I just threw in the standard underneath there, just so I'm making sure that for the ones that I'm checking off, taught and assessed, I have the standards listed. This is really just for my organization. Critical thinking fell into all three of those standards, so I put them all there. And then I added interview skills in one of the boxes for other, because each group is going to choose and interview one expert on their topic, whatever that topic might be, and that's going to be assessed in the presentation rubric as gathering and using a variety of sources. So it's going to be encouraged and taught and assessed. And so culminating products and performances group will be the group censorship presentation that will be presented to the class. And individually, they will all pass in an annotated bibliography and then discussion reflections. So project overview. The entry event I haven't put in yet. One of the things that BIE says about project-based learning is that you need a launch event or a launch inquiry to really grab their attention. But my launch inquiry for this project really is Fahrenheit 451 and the discussion of banned and challenged books that happens during that. That always really kind of sparks a fire. Most of the kids didn't know that books are banned and challenged, and why and who, and all of those really interesting questions. So Fahrenheit 451 is the project launch, really. Formative assessments, they'll be doing preliminary plans and outlines and prototypes of their presentation. They'll also be taking notes that I'll be watching, and they will be sharing their Mentor Mob playlists about halfway through the project with each other, and there will be lots of conferencing with the teacher during workshop time. And then the summative assessment, there will be an oral presentation with a rubric, and there will be a self-evaluation. Those will be the two summative assessments. So then there's the resources needed, and so I just jotted down everything that I'm going to need in order to make the project work. And it's even got a spot for reflection methods, and so how I'm going to be reflecting with students on their learning in whole class discussions. And I have what I call a conversation calendar, and we use that as exit slips, and my students are familiar with that already. I really like this part of the template, which was the teaching and learning guide. And so this was all blank, this part here. I filled it in. So what they asked for was knowledge and skills that are needed by the students, and then scaffolding materials or lessons that are going to be provided so that they can be successful. So it really made me think of every little mini lesson that I was going to have to teach in order for them to be successful. And how to put together and present the information, how to use Gale's Opposing Viewpoints database. It's a great database that we have. Our school is subscribed to a couple of really great databases. This is one of them, and I'm going to take them to the library, and our librarian does a lesson on this and how to use this database and how to use all the databases, but this is the one that I'm really going to have them focus on. How to use advanced searches using Google, and I will do that in a mini lesson. And I have a web page, maybe it'll pull that up in the background. How to take notes from research, and we'll be using, kind of that old-fashioned note card style, but we're going to do it electronically, and we're going to use digo.com to do that. Digo, I don't know if it was in another class that I found this or if it was in this class, but it's a way to collect and highlight information that you find online, and it saves it for you in the cloud, and you can access it. So when I find a website, I will have a Digo in my toolbar, and it will allow me to, on any website that I want, highlight, take notes, images, put sticky notes on there, and so to really do my note-taking electronically, which is, I just think that's where the students are headed. And back to the advanced searches on this blog that I found for one of my classes, this one or one that I just finished, this teacher has 10 helpful ways to do advanced searches and walks you through each of those. So I'll do a mini lesson on these, and we'll expect students to be able to do these different advanced searches, which will come out through my, I'll see that in observations and conferences. We will talk about how to annotate a bibliography, and they're going to be annotating for how they know the website is reliable or not. And so we're also going to have to do a lesson on what makes a website reliable and how we know, and what kind of questions we'll ask ourselves to determine if a website is reliable, or any information really. And then these ideas will be in the background. There's not going to be any explicit teaching necessarily at this point, because we will have discussed both of these while reading Fahrenheit 451, but the discussion of the First Amendment and the idea of intellectual freedom and our intellectual freedoms that are protected will continue, of course, with this censorship project, and that's what really will tie both of these together. And then there's a project calendar, and I won't read everything to you. You can definitely check out my link that I already posted if you want to go in and see what every day kind of looks like mapped out. But what you'll see is there's a lot of workshop time, and there's also that book group going on where students are reading banned and challenged American literature, and so I'm balancing both of those projects simultaneously, and you'll see the calendar only went to 3 weeks, and so I just have to come. We'll do a critical friends protocol, we'll have practice presentations, and then we'll have the actual presentations, and then the persuasive essay, which is part of the project that's running alongside this. So that's my Censor This project, where students get to delve into their own questions that they have about censorship and learn a little bit more, and at the same time learn how to put together a presentation, do so in a creative way, and assess whether or not their information that they're finding is reliable. So they're doing a lot in a fairly small time span, which is now one of the things that I realized that I like about the project-based learning, is that you can really have a lot of learning going on in a fairly short amount of time, which is really important to me because we're on a 4x4 schedule, and I only have my students for one semester, and so I like to do as much learning as possible. So this is it, my censorship project, and there is a link to it so you can pull it up and look at the actual document a little bit closer. All right, thank you.